Today, we're diving deep into Chapter 10 of the Bhagavad Gita, but we're not going to treat it like some ancient myth. Nope, we're going to look at it as a practical, hands-on guide for training our own perception, for learning how to find real meaning and order in the world all around us. Let's get right into it.
So put yourself in Arjuna's shoes for a second. You've gone on this incredible inner journey. You've gotten clear on who you are, you've learned how to act without your ego running the show, and you've disciplined your mind. You finally have this inner clarity. And then comes the big question, right? You've got to be thinking, now what? How does all this internal stuff actually connect with the messy, real world out there?
And that's precisely the turn the teaching takes. See, after you've built that inner foundation, the world itself becomes the real test. It's not about running away from life, it's about learning how to engage with it from a totally new perspective.
Okay, so let's just quickly run through the groundwork that's been laid so far. Krishna has already walked Arjuna through these huge concepts: understanding his true identity, acting without the ego calling the shots, getting control over his own mind, gaining direct knowledge instead of just blind belief, and seeing devotion as a way of aligning himself with truth. That's a ton of inner work, and it really sets the stage for what comes next.
Now, you'd think the next logical step would be, to retreat. Go find a quiet cave and meditate for a while. But Krishna does the exact opposite. He completely pivots and points our attention right back at the world. And there's a really good reason for this.
And this quote just nails it. The whole point is that if your understanding is actually real, it can't just be some abstract idea floating around in your head. It has to show up in how you see everything. Truth isn't hiding somewhere else. You learn to recognize it right here in the world.
But to even begin to do that, we've got to tackle a word that trips a lot of people up: the divine. Because the way it's used here is probably not what you're thinking.
Yeah, so let's get this straight. The common idea, the misconception, is that the divine is some kind of supernatural entity hiding behind a tree or in a rock. But that's not it at all. What the Gita's pointing to is something way more profound and, honestly, more useful. It's the underlying intelligence, the fundamental order and coherence that exists in everything.
So here's the working definition we need. When Krishna talks about seeing the divine, he means recognizing the source code of reality. It's that intelligence that lets a star burn, or a mountain be steady, or a brilliant leader lead. It's the built-in order and capacity that makes things what they are. And this right here is a game changer. This chapter isn't a call to worship everything you see. It's a training manual for your perception. It's about learning to spot the principles of strength, of clarity, of order, wherever and whenever they pop up. So how does this actually work? How do you practice this? Well, Krishna doesn't just leave us with a definition. He gives us a very practical training exercise for the mind.
He starts listing these amazing peak examples of things. He points to the absolute pinnacle of every quality: the greatest strength, the most effective leadership, the brightest light, the most unshakable mountain. What he's doing is giving Arjuna and us a set of coordinates to help orient the mind.
And this is the absolute key to the whole thing. He's not saying worship these things. He's saying use them as reference points. They're tools. By focusing your attention on the best expression of a quality, you begin to understand the principle of that quality itself. It's genius, really.
And you can really see the before and after of this kind of mental training. An untrained mind looks out at the world and just sees a bunch of random, chaotic stuff. And then it judges all that stuff through its own ego, which leads to this exhausting, endless game of comparison. But a trained mind can look at the exact same world and see the underlying order, the principles at work, the expressions of excellence.
And the psychological payoff for this is huge. When you learn to see the principle of excellence in someone else's achievement, you can genuinely appreciate it without your ego getting all tangled up in it. You don't feel jealous or inferior, and you don't feel arrogant either. You just develop this really mature, stable relationship with ability and success, both in others and in yourself. So, why are we talking about this ancient wisdom today? Well, because it offers a really powerful way out of a very modern problem. So many of us feel trapped between these two extremes, right? On one side, you've got blind belief in myths and superstition just to feel like life has some meaning, and on the other, you've got this cynical, nihilistic view that, ultimately, nothing matters at all. It feels like you have to choose one or the other. But this teaching, it opens up a third path. It's a way to find deep, profound meaning in the world without having to switch off your brain or abandon reason. It's both intelligent and incredibly meaningful. So what does this look like in your actual life? Well, it means you start to consciously respect intelligence wherever you see it, in a person, in a piece of technology, in a natural system. It means you start to genuinely value things like discipline, integrity, and excellence. And you train your mind to look for the order in complex systems instead of just getting overwhelmed by the surface-level chaos.
And the result is incredibly empowering. When you start to adopt this way of seeing, life gets its depth back. A real sense of meaning returns. But this time, it's grounded in clear-eyed recognition, not in superstition or wishful thinking.
And so that leaves us with this final question to really think about, a question that gets right to the heart of this entire practice. How do we learn to see and genuinely appreciate excellence in the world, in other people, in nature, in art, without immediately running it through the filter of our own ego? That voice of comparison that's always asking, am I better than? Am I less than? That's the real challenge and the profound opportunity that this way of seeing offers.